What happens when a normal person gets a paper cut? They wince, they suck their finger, they yell, ouch, and desperately look for a band-aid. What if you stub your toe on the corner of a table? You literally hate life for 10 straight minutes and feel like crying. Now, imagine this. A dark street. Thousands of people are cheering for you. And suddenly, a maniac steps out of the crowd, aims a revolver directly at your heart from 5 feet away, and pulls the trigger. A heavy .38 caliber lead bullet violently rips into your chest. Blood is flowing. It's hard to breathe. What do? You collapse. You scream for an ambulance. Or you just die. But the 26th President of the United States, Theodore Roosevelt, did not do that. Covered in his own blood, he absolutely refused to go to a hospital. He pushed the doctors aside, walked up to a podium in front of a massive crowd, and while his white shirt was rapidly turning crimson, he smiled and said, "Excuse me, friends, I have just been shot, but I am not leaving until I finish my speech." Lean in close to the screen. Pay attention, because today, we are not talking about boring textbook politics. We are talking about the most terrifying, fearless, absolute Terminator-level badassery in human history. A story that leaves Hollywood action movies eating dust. After hearing this, your modern-day problems are going to look absolutely hilarious. Theodore Roosevelt wasn't just a politician. He was a wild beast in a suit, an absolute apex predator in human form. As a child, he was weak and suffered from severe asthma. So what did he do? He started boxing professionally just to beat the illness. He did judo. He hunted bears with his bare hands. After his presidency, he went to the Amazon rainforest to discover new rivers, almost died from malaria, and still kept smiling. Basically, death was terrified to even approach him. But in 1912, the universe decided to give Roosevelt the ultimate, brutal test. He was running for president for a third term under the Progressive Party, or as he called it, the Bull Moose Party. The country was divided. The political heat was boiling. October 14th, 1912, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. A cold, dark autumn evening. Roosevelt stepped out of his hotel to give his next campaign speech. Thousands of people had gathered, screaming and cheering for their hero. Roosevelt climbed into an open-top car, tipped his hat, and smiled at the crowd. But hidden in that crowd was a man named John Schrank. John wasn't a normal voter. He was a severely schizophrenic man who claimed the ghost of assassinated President William McKinley came to him in a dream and ordered him to kill Roosevelt. Trusting a literal ghost, John stalked Roosevelt across America for almost 2,000 miles, like a dark shadow. And finally, that night, John found his opening. He stepped within 5 feet of the car, pulled a heavy .38 caliber Colt revolver from his coat, aimed it directly at Roosevelt's heart, and pulled the trigger. Bang! The gun flashed. A heavy lead bullet flew toward Roosevelt's chest at hundreds of feet per second. From that distance, a bullet like that should have ripped a man in half and shredded his heart instantly. Roosevelt staggered, but he did not fall. The bullet slammed into his chest with immense force. But why didn't he die? In a cosmic, miraculous joke, the thing that saved Roosevelt's life wasn't a bulletproof vest. It was his speech. Roosevelt had placed a thick, steel eyeglass case in his coat pocket, and right next to it was his famously long, incredibly boring, 50-page campaign speech. And it was folded in half. That is 100 layers of thick paper. The bullet pierced the coat. Then it smashed through the steel case. Then it violently tore through all 100 layers of paper. By the time it did all that, the bullet lost its lethal speed. But it still pierced his skin and lodged itself deep between his ribs, just millimeters away from his heart. For 1 second after the gunshot, there was dead silence. And then, Absolute chaos. The crowd grabbed the assassin, John Schrank. The furious mob was about to literally tear him to pieces right there on the street. "Kill him! Choke him!" they screamed. And then, bleeding from the chest, standing on the edge of death, Roosevelt stood up tall. He didn't hunch over in pain. In a booming, commanding voice, he roared at the crowd, "Stop! Do not touch him! Bring him to me!" The crowd froze. The bodyguards dragged the trembling assassin to Roosevelt. Roosevelt looked the killer dead in the eyes. Staring at the pathetic, shaking man, Roosevelt simply said, "Poor creature," and ordered the police to take him away. He had just saved the life of the man who tried to murder him. But Roosevelt's body was covered in blood. Doctors rushed over in a panic. "Mr. President, we need to get to the hospital now. You are bleeding out." Roosevelt was perfectly calm. Like a true wilderness hunter, he decided to diagnose his own gunshot wound. He knew that if the bullet had pierced his lung, he would be coughing up blood. He put his hand over his mouth and coughed hard. He looked at his hand. No blood. The lung was safe. Roosevelt smiled at the doctors and made the most hardcore decision in human history. "I am not going to the hospital," he said coldly. "Take me to the auditorium immediately. There are thousands of people waiting for my speech. I will deliver this speech, or I will die on that stage." The people around him thought he had lost his mind, but you couldn't argue with Teddy Roosevelt. The bleeding president was brought into the auditorium. Almost 10,000 people were inside, completely unaware of what had just happened outside, cheering wildly for their leader. Roosevelt walked onto the stage with heavy steps. His face was pale. His breathing was heavy. He stepped up to the microphone. The room went quiet. Roosevelt unbuttoned his coat. When the crowd saw his white shirt soaked in dark, spreading red blood, they froze in absolute horror. You could hear a pin drop in that massive room. People couldn't believe their eyes. Roosevelt reached into his inner pocket and pulled out the blood-soaked 50-page speech with a massive bullet hole straight through the middle. He held it up high for everyone to see and delivered the most epic, cold-blooded, badass quote in history. "Friends, I don't know whether you fully understand that I have just been shot." He took a deep breath. "But it takes more than that to kill a bull moose." The room literally exploded. People were crying, screaming, losing their minds. The entire crowd bowed down to the sheer willpower of this one man. But that isn't even the end. The crowd thought, "Okay, now he's going to the hospital." Nope. Roosevelt put his papers down and started to speak. And he didn't speak for 10 minutes. He didn't speak for 20 minutes. He delivered his political speech for exactly 84 minutes. Can you imagine that? 84 minutes. There is a lead bullet tearing into his flesh right against his ribs. Every time he took a breath, every time he spoke, the bullet scraped against his nerves, sending agonizing pain through his body. The blood slowly continued to leak. His energy drained, his voice grew tired. His bodyguards stood right behind him, ready to catch him if he collapsed. But he never fell. He stood tall and finished his speech to the very last word. And only when he had said everything he wanted to say, he calmly looked at his team and said, "All right, friends, you can take me to the hospital now." At the hospital, an X-ray revealed the terrifying truth. The bullet had stopped deep in his chest muscles, just a fraction of an inch from his heart. The doctors decided it was too dangerous to remove it. And so, Theodore Roosevelt proudly carried his assassin's bullet inside his chest for the rest of his life, until the day he died. It just became a part of him. Look at politicians today. If someone throws an egg at them or yells a little too loud, they immediately hide behind security and spend weeks in therapy. Theodore Roosevelt is the only absolute legend in history who told the Grim Reaper to hold on a second, just so he could finish his daily schedule. If you ever need to explain what pure, unbreakable willpower looks like, just say the name Theodore Roosevelt. Do you think there is any hero in history who can match this insane level of fearlessness? Let me know in the comments. I will read every single one of them. If you couldn't break away from the hypnosis of this story, and if you want to hear more mind-blowing, blood-pumping historical facts they never taught you in school, hit that subscribe button right now. I'll see you in the next video with an even crazier story. Stay safe out there.